Hey, how are we doing, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today I've got 5 wide receivers I am loving in my lineups here in Week 15 for the first round of the 2021 Fantasy Football Playoffs. These are players that I think either have very safe floors or in some occasions here, I really like that ceiling as well, and I think it can be something that propels us, whether it's your wide receiver 2 or flex position, into a potential win in these pivotal games. So we're trying to win these championships. We're trying to have a strong finish here down the stretch, and I think these players, again, will be assets to help us accomplish those goals. So with that being said, drop down, give today's episode a like, and click that subscribe button if you're new around here. Join the SFS community. Join the SFS community Discord. That is linked for free in the description of today's episode. You can join that up, chat on game day, all that great stuff. It's a fun time in there. And let's not waste any more time. Hit the intro, and let's get started. Alrighty, everyone. So also coming out today are my 5 must-start running backs for this week. Go check out that episode and see if you've got any of those players on your roster as well. A quick little bonus for those of you watching this episode on Thursday morning. I do, in addition to the players I posted in that video, really like Clyde Edwards-Helaire this evening on Thursday night against the LA Chargers. Darrell Williams has been fairly involved, but I think that there is the opportunity against a fairly weak rushing defense to pick up some extra efficiency on those touches. And if he can get some of that passing involvement as well, which I will, concede that Williams is taking some of that value away from Clyde, but that's something to potentially have yourself in a RB2 scenario here in PPR League. So Jaylen Waddle, the first wide receiver, so actually getting into the topic of today's episode, the first wideout on the list for today, taking on the New York Jets here. I just love everything Jaylen Waddle brings to the table. Coming off a bye week, I missed him in my lineups last week. You guys probably did as well if you are Jaylen Waddle owners. If you're playing in PPR leagues, especially, because he has been a monster in that scoring format. The volume has been off the charts, 9 or more targets in 75% of his last 8 games. So if you do the math there, that's 6 of his last 8 performances. Tua trusts him, and he's starting to throw the ball to him more down the field as well. So whereas early on in the season, we were getting a lot of dink and dunk, screen, and swing passes out in the flats, you're starting to see Jaylen push the ball down the field, make more contested grabs, 10, 15, 20 yards down there. His probably most impressive play of this season was I believe it was a 24-yard strike between him and Tua against the Ravens on Marlon Humphrey. So a lot of talent here with Jaylen Waddle, a lot of explosiveness. So any one of those underneath patterns that gets thrown his way could potentially become a bigger play because of what he can do after the catch. One last note here on Jaylen Waddle. The Miami Dolphins backfield is absolutely hammered right now with COVID. They have, I believe, Duke Johnson is their one guy who might be able to play this week. Other than that, Gaskin has it right now, and Ahmed has it as well, I believe. So it is a mess. Unless people can test negative here and get back out there and available, they're not really going to have much of a run game here. So what does that mean? Underneath passing game, which is something the Dolphins already do a lot of, but that means more Jaylen Waddle. Get him the football more underneath, get your playmakers the football out in space and making plays. This could mean a huge volume performance for Jaylen Waddle here in Week 15. Tyler Lockett here for the Seattle Seahawks, taking on the Rams this week. Lockett's been on fire. The last 4 games, he is significantly outscoring DK Metcalf and has 10.5 or more in each of those 4 games, including 2 games with more than 100 yards receiving and 2 contests with a receiving touchdown. So, again, he's getting the job done. DK Metcalf is not. He has 60 or fewer yards in each of the last 5 weeks since Russell Wilson returned from that finger injury. So Lockett right now is the hotter receiver in the offense. You're getting a matchup with Jalen Ramsey. If he's available coming off of COVID, he's also a player right now who no longer shadows and no longer has a coverage where he will follow a star wide receiver. He just goes out there, lines up, and plays whoever's on him. So there's not going to be Tyler Lockett getting shadowed by Ramsey. You're not going to see Metcalf get shadowed by Ramsey. You're just going to have an opportunity for both of these players to go out and make plays against this defense. and Lockett, again, being the hotter of the two wideouts, being the player who I believe has more chemistry. He's obviously got a longer career with Russell Wilson. He's had more seasons under his belt with that connection being a thing here in the NFL. I believe in Tyler Lockett. I think he can put up another impressive performance here and continue to have an impressive game. Brandin Cooks taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. Another matchup I love, another opportunity for a high ceiling. He had back in week one of his best games of the season, 5 grabs for 132 yards against this Jacksonville Jaguars secondary, which might even be lesser now than it was back then as C.J. Henderson was shipped out midseason. So you're getting the same team, same matchup, and a different quarterback. That's the one kicker here. Tyrod Taylor was the QB in that matchup for Brandin Cooks back in week one. However, this past week, Brandin Cooks had 8 receptions for 101 yards on 11 targets with Davis Mills as the quarterback against the Seahawks. So we've seen a few games this year where Davis Mills as the starter has gotten Cooks enough looks and gotten Cooks enough volume to produce nice numbers. I think there might be a little something here. I'm not ready to say that Davis Mills is the starting quarterback for the Texans, but he does have somewhat of an arm. He does have the ability to read weaker defenses. Now, he's really struggled at times this season, and he's looked awful at other times. But who knows? Maybe Davis has a strong finish to the season. He was tops in the league in passing yards last week. Maybe he comes back out here next season as the starter for Houston. Now, we are totally getting off the topic of 5 must-start receivers. But if you're an NFL fan, hopefully you can at least bear with me for a second here. This is a weaker QB draft class. Maybe the Texans give Mills another season to have a shot at that starting QB job if Watson's nowhere to be seen. You never know. Texans might learn some stuff here over the last 4 games. He certainly looked decent last week against Seattle. And again, I think Cooks gets the benefit of that situation, being the best skill player in the offense right now, the most explosive pass catcher for this Houston Texans team, and playing a weaker secondary, which he's already exploited once this year. Brandin Aiyuk, I can't stop talking about him here. We freaking love Brandin Aiyuk here at SFS. This guy is so talented. He is such a playmaker. Unfortunately, he's not the second fiddle in the offense. He's the third fiddle behind both George Kittle and Deebo Samuel. But when he gets the looks, when he gets the requisite opportunities, he goes out there and he makes big plays and he produces points for our fantasy lineups. Last week, how about Aiyuk in overtime scoring the game-winning touchdown against the Cincinnati Bengals? That was awesome to see. I was up standing off the couch screaming and shouting. Obviously happy shouting with Aiyuk here scoring fantasy points for us. This is a weaker secondary. The Falcons have one quality corner in A.J. Terrell. And outside of that, there are very exploitable matchups on the board here. And when you have a skill group and a personnel department like the San Francisco 49ers have, your hands are tied. Your hands are full, whatever you want to say. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandin Aiyuk, these are 3 high-level playmakers that are going to go out there and basically make it so that you have to pick and choose your poison. And the opportune time for someone to pop open is a Brandin Aiyuk, who is the number 3 threat to opposing defenses, who is getting the lightest coverage assignment. He's going to be able to go out there and exploit those matchups. So you get him, again, between 5 and 6 receptions or looks in a game. I think you've got a real shot for some upside here. He's not the most consistent threat in the world, but I really love his ceiling. And again, this is a matchup where I think he can produce for our lineups yet again here in Week 15. So sticking true and strong here with Brandin Aiyuk down the stretch. I've absolutely loved how he's played in the back half of this season. And then Darnell Mooney here, talking about our last player on the list for today. This is less of a belief in a faith system in the Chicago Bears offense, and more of just the fact that the Vikings secondary stinks. I mean, they do have Pat P, but he at this point in his career is washed and not the player he once was. They are the 31st ranked unit against the fantasy wide receiver, which is, if you did the math there or just, used your common sense, 32 teams in the league, they're ranked 31st. That is second to last, so they are very awful in that statistical marker. And you're getting the most explosive player at the pass-catching position for at least the vertical passing game in the Chicago offense. So Darnell Mooney's had a quieter last 2 weeks. He had not exactly the best performance against the Packers. You could say he had 1 catch in that matchup. And again, that's okay. He was playing a tougher defense. He had one opportunity where Fields threw him the football and it actually got pick six by Rasul Douglas. But at the end of the day, this isn't an offense that's been all that tightened up throughout this season. They've had their bumps in the road. They've had their struggles, especially because they've had to flip-flop between quarterbacks, whether it's Andy Dalton or Justin Fields lining up under center. So, and a large part of that has been injuries to each player. Fields was forced onto or into the lineup early on in the year because of an injury to Andy Dalton, and then Fields is the starter. They're going to start him the rest of the season. He injures his ribs. Now Andy Dalton has to come back in, and then Andy Dalton gets injured for Fields to come back in this past week and return from that, again, rib injury. So it's been an absolute quarterback carousel between two players, but still back and forth with those two different options. Again, Mooney was quieter the last couple of weeks here against Arizona. He didn't do too much as well. But this Vikings defense gives up big plays. Fields' favorite target is Darnell Mooney. He's the guy that has chemistry with him. These are the players that stay after practice. You hear this every time they put on the Bears. They talk about how Fields and Mooney have the chemistry. They stay after practice, run routes together, and figure out how to get their timing down. These are the two I believe in this offense, outside of David Montgomery, and I think that Darnell Mooney as a flex option can be a high upside play for this week. If you want a couple bonus options for starting in your lineups, that potentially a flex level play, Christian Kirk and AJ Green are now players that I find very interesting, with DeAndre Hopkins likely out the rest of this regular season. That's going to open up some targets, force Kyler to spread the ball around a little bit. Maybe it makes Zach Ertz a more intriguing tight end target. A lot of things to assess there, but I do like those players as high upside. Not necessarily the safest floor plays. They're similar to Darnell Mooney here. I'll be the first to tell you. Mooney's floor is not all that fantastic, but the matchup, the situation, the opportunity for him to go out there and have a boom game that could potentially vault you over the top in your matchup, that is something that's certainly at play. Another option I like is Van Jefferson taking on Seattle this week. Odell's got COVID right now. He is out or I shouldn't say that. He's not officially out of the game at this point in time while I'm recording this video. However, he has tested positive. So he would have to overcome COVID protocols, get back in the lineup, and ready to go for that matchup in order to be available for this Sunday's game. So Van Jefferson would then, next man up mentality. He's a very talented player. He's got 6 receiving touchdowns on the year, and he's a field stretcher. He can make the big play. He can go over the top and score. He would be someone else that I like as a streaming option in the flex position, similar to, again, Mooney, Christian Kirk, AJ Green, all players that I think could go out there and give us some really nice games. Alrighty, those were my 5 and bonus 3, I guess, wide receivers that I think can make differences in lineups here in Week 15. Let me know down in the comment section below, what's the toughest matchup you've got this week? Who's the toughest player? What is the biggest obstacle in your way to get to the fantasy football championships? I'm interested to see what you guys are up against and, help you guys assess your odds here and get that best lineup compiled here and ready to go for those matchups. So if you've got additional lineup advice you need from me, if you've got any questions, put those down in the comment section below. I'm happy to get back to as many of you as I can in the free time I've got and help you guys win those big games. So thank you guys so much for sticking with me this season. Let's finish this thing off strong and keep stacking those wins and get those championships here. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace out.